If you're running a business here in Canada, you probably know the feeling. You've got one up for sales, a completely different one for accounting, maybe a third one for inventory. It gets messy fast. Well, today we're going to talk about a single solution that's been picking up some serious steam from coast to coast, Odoo ERP. Let's break down exactly what it is, and more importantly, why it might just be perfect for Canada.
Does this look familiar? You're hopping between different software all day long. It creates these little islands of data, wastes a ton of time with manual entry, and, trying to get a clear, big picture view of your own business? Almost impossible. This exact problem is why more and more companies are saying there has to be a better way. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll dive into that software headache we all know and love. Then, we'll introduce Odoo as the potential cure. After that, we'll get specific. What's the Canadian advantage? We'll even see how it stacks up against the big guys and finish with a simple roadmap to get you started. So let's really get into that software headache. It isn't just annoying. It's a real drag on your operations. And what we're seeing is a huge shift. Canadian businesses are actively ditching that fragmented, patched-together model. They're moving towards something called a single source of truth, these integrated platforms known as ERPs. And this isn't just a feeling. The numbers back it up. Take a look at this trend. Back in 2022, about 35% of medium-sized Canadian businesses were using an ERP. Fast forward to 2025, and that number is projected to hit 41%. That's not just a tiny blip. It's a real, significant move towards getting everything under one roof. And that brings us right to Odoo, because if the problem is trying to juggle a dozen different apps, Odoo's whole pitch is being the one integrated system to run your entire business. Simple as that. So what is it really? At its heart, Odoo is basically a collection of business apps. They call them modules that are all built to talk to each other perfectly. And the key here is that it's open source. That just means it offers a crazy amount of flexibility that a lot of the old school traditional systems simply can't compete with. And this really shows you what that all-in-one idea looks like in practice. Need to manage your sales pipeline? Check. Handle your accounting? Check. Track inventory, run a factory, manage payroll, build an e-commerce site? Yep, there's a module for all of that. You just pick and choose what your business actually needs. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for us. Why does any of this matter specifically for a business operating right here in Canada? Well, because Odoo isn't just some generic global platform. It has features built specifically for our market. Just look at this list. Full English and French support right out of the box. That's massive, especially if you operate in Quebec or nationally. It hooks up directly with Canadian payment systems like Monoris. It can handle our wonderfully complex sales taxes, GST, HST, QST, you name it. And it's designed from the ground up for PIPEDA compliance. These aren't just add-ons, they're core to the system. And the results? Well, they pretty much speak for themselves. Here's a great example. A food wholesaler based in Montreal. They made the switch from a big traditional system, SAP Business One, to Odoo. They didn't just get a system that worked better for them, they slashed their software licensing costs by a jaw-dropping 72%. And it's a similar story over on the West Coast. A Vancouver-based e-commerce company integrated Odoo with their Shopify store and Monoris. The result? They cut the time they were spending on mind-numbing manual financial reconciliation by 60%. And that was just in the first 3 months. Now, this is a critical point that you absolutely cannot ignore if you're a Canadian business handling customer data. Data sovereignty, which just means keeping Canadian data on Canadian soil, is a legal requirement under PIPEDA. Odoo makes this super simple by letting you host your entire system in data centers right here in Toronto or Montreal, so you know you're fully compliant. So the big question, how does Odoo really stack up against the household names, the traditional giants of the ERP world? Well, this is where that open source model creates a massive advantage, especially for small and medium-sized businesses. This table just lays it all out. I mean, look at the cost per user. You're talking about a fraction of what you'd pay for a traditional ERP. Then look at the implementation time. We're talking about a few months, not a project that drags on for over a year. And on top of all that, the ability to customize it to fit your business, not the other way around, is just way, way higher. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. This quote from IDC Canada sums it up perfectly. Canadian small and medium-sized enterprises are seeing cost savings anywhere from 40 to 70% compared to the legacy giants, all while getting more control over their own software. It's also really important to know you've got options.
Odoo basically comes in two main versions. There's the community version, which is, get this, completely free. It's incredible for startups or businesses with simpler needs. Then there's the enterprise version. That's a paid subscription that gets you all the official modules, professional support, and seamless upgrades. A lot of Canadian companies actually start on the free version and then upgrade as they grow. Okay, so this all sounds pretty great, but you're probably thinking, how do I actually make this happen? It can seem daunting, so let's walk through a clear, straightforward roadmap for getting Odoo up and running in your business. For a typical small or medium-sized business, a full implementation usually takes somewhere between 2 and 6 months. See, it's a manageable project. It's broken down into these clear phases. You start with planning, move into the heavy lifting of data migration and customization, and then finish up with training your team and flicking the switch. And really, the key to a successful project is just following a structured process like this. You start by figuring out what you actually need. Then, and this is important, you find a local Odoo partner who gets the Canadian landscape. From there, it's about moving your data, tweaking the software, and getting your team ready for a smooth launch. And following those steps, it really, really matters. According to Panorama Consulting Group, projects that take a structured approach like this have a 75% higher chance of success. So, planning isn't just a good idea, it's everything. And finally, let's just take a quick peek at the future, because the world of ERP is not standing still. A huge majority, 68% of Canadian SMEs are planning to invest more in automation. Cloud adoption is way up, and the number one most requested feature right now, you guessed it, AI. Odoo is already building these things in, positioning itself for where business is headed. So, I guess that brings us to the final question, the one that's really for you. When you look at the cost savings, the features built just for Canada, and this whole trend towards having a single source of truth, is your business ready to finally stop juggling and start integrating?